Hello my friends, welcome back. It's been a while, it's been a long time. Sadly, we lost our sister recently. It's been a very sad time. I haven't been able to get into the zone for painting. I'm sure you understand what it's like. Sometimes you just get a mental block and it's very difficult to get into your painting and get into that mindset. When something like this happens in a family, it's very difficult. So I apologize, I haven't been around for a while, a couple of weeks. So there was just so much going on, you know, coming and going and all of that. I just did not have time to sit down and paint. So look, she passed peacefully, my sister, she passed peacefully, which is all we can hope for, isn't it? I think you will agree. But thank you sincerely for all your condolences. And your comments. I do sincerely appreciate them all, okay? I really do. But I'm up this morning now. I'm eager to start a bit of painting. I haven't lifted a brush in weeks. I'm going to paint a lovely little scene. It's a beach with a boat. It's a very nice little picture. I have a picture of it here for you, just to show you. I think that'll make a nice little tutorial. I have a nice square canvas. It's 40 by 40 centimeters, and I've some colours laid out here, just a handful of colours, and we'll make this a two-part. I'll never get this finished in one part, it'll take too much time. So we'll make a nice two-part little tutorial out of this, and I will be cracking on them with one for Patreon as well, tomorrow or the next day. So if you're over on Patreon, thank you so much as well for your thoughts and prayers and condolences, and I will be with you very soon. Okay. In the meantime, let's have a bit of fun with this. I'm eager to get cracking and pick up some brushes. I hope you are too. So join me, follow me along if you wish. Let's go. Let's have a bit of fun with this. I'll be right back. Okay, here we go, my friends. Let's have a bit of fun with this one. There is my palette. My colours are titanium white, Naples yellow, burnt sienna, magenta, phthalo blue, lamp black, cadmium yellow and burnt umber. Just for now, we'll add in cadmium red in part 2. I'm going to take some masking tape and pop a little bit of masking tape just across the horizon line, just to give us a nice clean line. Now, looking at the photograph, you should see it there. It looks like it's just below halfways, thereabouts. It's never a good idea to have your horizon line right in the middle. It just kind of, it's always better to have it slightly lower than the center. So I'm going to try and get it just below the center somewhere. I think somewhere around there is probably okay. Now we can adjust this and mess around with it as we need. Let's do a little bit of sketching and let's draw our boat and bits and pieces. Let's get some reference lines on the canvas, yes? I'm going to start down here with the corner of the boat down here. Look, let's go around here. Comes up at an angle, doesn't it? Again, I'm going to just keep this kind of loose now. A piece comes down at the side like that, and it comes down like so. This part now, to create perspective, it needs to go back like this, okay? And then up like that. That creates perspective. This is the tricky part of a drawing a boat like this. So it comes down like this, very narrow, and it swoops around, and then it kind of goes around sharp like this, let's say. And then this part, there's probably a slight rise in this part like that. Okay, I'm going to just go with that. Give or take, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Again, just a couple of lines. And this will come over and disappear like so. I think that's okay. I'm happy enough with that. Let's put in a suggestion of some grass here. So we have a little bit of grass here and here. We see a little bit of water off in the distance. Now this will be the horizon line, the top of the line, so the water will be around where this masking tape is. I'm not too worried about that. Look, that's fine. And okay, we're okay with that. I think that's fine. Let's start painting the sky. Now I have gloves on me. It's very cold in the studio today. It's freezing cold. So I hope you can see, okay, it's not too distracting for you, I hope. I'm going to grab a large brush. What I am going to do is just dampen the sky with a little linseed oil. That again, that will just help the paints go around nice and soft. Now this is a good canvas. It's well primed, it's absolutely fine. But I just want to give the paint a little bit of a helping hand with a tiny layer. Just a very thin layer of oil, that's all. Very thin layer. Doesn't have to be perfect, look, just a very, very quick once over. There we go, job done. Now it's time to start putting some colour on the canvas. Let's have a bit of fun. I'm going with Phaylo blue and white, I think, and I might just take a touch of magenta as well. So let's just take a brush, get some Phaylo blue, lots of white. Needs to be nice and bright. Phaylo blue, I find, is a nice blue because it has an earthy kind of a hue to it. It's very, very earthy. It's just a nice blue. It's not too rich like a French ultramarine, and it's not too soft like cobalt. This is a nice earthy sort of a blue. It's kind of perfect right in the middle for me anyway. And especially for seascapes, it has that kind of a greeny undertone to it. So let's just go across and pop some Phaylo blue across there. And you can see now how that's gliding across the canvas. Just lovely, isn't it? Get a bit of white. Let's come down and add a bit of light colour down here. I'm going to leave this big area here. Let's pretend there's some clouds here. Let's just go around the cloud area just to leave that white. It saves us a lot of trouble later on trying to get lots of white paint over the blue, because any blue, whether it's Phaylo blue or French ultramarine, it takes a lot of colour to cover those with white. If you're putting on white clouds on top, it takes a lot of colour. So it can be a lot of work. Now I'm going to add the tiniest hint of Naples yellow into this. I want to give this a very soft turquoisey colour, okay? And it's only the tiniest little hint I have, that's all. Let me mix a bit more colour now. A little bit of Naples yellow, tiny bit, it makes a big difference. And we have this sort of a greeny, bluey hue going on. Again, just be very quick and very rough with this now. You don't have to be absolutely perfect. Just put the colour on and we can soften it all together then, you see. I'm just softening away the brush strokes, that's all I'm doing. So there. Now I'm going to add some richer blue up on top. I'm going to take a little bit of Phaylo, tiniest bit of magenta. I just want to give it a nice impact up on the top. And you see what happens? It mixes in with the colour already there. So you have to keep adding and adding and adding, okay? Let's go nice and dark, because when we put this darker shade on, it's going to lighten very, very quickly. You see what I mean? That's a bit richer now, it's nicer, isn't it? Just add a nice bit of contrast up on the top of the canvas. There we go. Now, I think that's absolutely fine for what I need. I'm going to clean this brush very quickly. I'm going to start putting on the clouds. And when I do clouds like this, I generally start with a little bit of the darker colour, okay? You see this lovely shade we have. Let's create a nice cloud. So shadows on clouds can be tricky. Let's have a go and see what we can do. Let's take a little bit of Phaylo blue, tiny bit. I'm going to take some magenta. And I'm going to take a tiny touch of burnt umber. Now it's just a matter of adding a little bit of each colour until you get the shade you want, basically. Let's take a bit of white into that. Now that generally gives you a nice shadow colour for a cloud. But you can adjust the mixes as you need. Let's pop a little bit on and try. Let's just have a look. Okay, now that's not bad, is it? Let's go along and just pop a little bit of that across first. Remember, we can add different shades into this. So, for example, maybe if I took a tiny touch of magenta and just made it that little bit more on the pink side as it goes off. Okay. And I could also maybe take a tiny touch of black and put a little touch of black in with that mix and darken it slightly just towards the bottom. You see what I mean? So I'm adding these different little shades into the cloud as I go. And I'm also going to just bring some of those across the bottom as well, like this, look. Just to make it look busy towards the horizon, as if there's a few clouds just dotted along down below as well. But that's basically how I approach a nice shadow on a sky. Now I'm also going to take a little bit of blue, a bit of magenta, tiny touch of black. And I'm going to pop that deeper shade just here and there as well. Now I won't do any more than that. I'm going to rub my brush on some tissue just to get most of that colour out. And I'm just going to very gently go around the little circles and just start softening that in to the cloud around it. That's all. As well down the bottom, look, we can just soften those away very gently. Now that is my shadow of the cloud pretty much done. The next stage is the white. I'll clean my brush again, dip it into some thinners and just dab it on some tissue. Let the tissue soak the paint off of your brush. Okay? Do not swirl your brush around in the thinners because you will immediately destroy all the thinners you have. So I'm making sure my brush is nice and clean. You can switch brushes now if you like. Okay? I just like this brush. I'm going to go right into some white. And I want to start putting some white up on the top of that. And my technique for this is little swirls. I find doing little swirls like this, it just gives you a natural kind of a shape for a cloud. And I'm being very kind of loose with this. I'm allowing it to sort of flick off here and there, look. Just little bits on their own as well. And then I'll start softening that down into the shadow colour. In little circles, you see? I'm just going around in little circles. So we gradually go from a shadow to a bright. Now even already that looks quite nice, doesn't it? Let's go back into some white, just on the corner of the brush. Let's get a nice bright white just here. And be careful not to overdo this. I tend to keep all of these things nice and simple when I'm painting clouds especially. I don't like to be just going over and constantly going over the same area because you lose what you have. I tend to just pop little bits on like this, look, and then just leave them, or even just maybe soften them in very slightly. But I don't keep going at the same area. Maybe you have one little cloud over there somewhere, and just very loosely go off like that. Already looks quite nice, doesn't it? Now we have a couple up here dancing around, don't we? Let's break up that blue sky just a little. Very gently, just sort of dabbing the brush in very kind of random way. Okay? Now, that in itself is absolutely fine. It's a nice simple sky. You don't have to overcomplicate your sky and your clouds. You just keep it nice and simple like this. That's really all you have to do. Now I'm going to just stop at that. I'm going to take my soft blender brush, or makeup brush as it's probably better known. Now, just so you believe me, I'm going to go in here and show you. What does that say there? A powder brush. A cheap makeup powder brush. That's all it is. They're the best in the world, aren't they? Really. Let's just soften some of these away. Not too much, but I just want to take the edge off of some of these clouds. Just soft, nice soft clouds floating along in the sky. But I'm still, you see how I'm still keeping the direction of the brush strokes. I'm not getting rid of them. Just keeping it all nice and soft, a nice soft sky. And there we are. The sky is finished. That's it, we're done. Let's peel off our masking tape. And that's a nice little lesson on how to paint a cloud. If you're painting a big landscape and you could do lots of these sort of clouds everywhere, all across your sky, that's the basic technique I would use for painting a simple cloud, okay? Let's go in and paint some water off in the distance. Let's get some black, tiny bit of blue, and some magenta, and a little bit of burnt umber. It's a funny kind of a colour off in the distance. It's a dark, deep colour. There's a hint of a mauve shade in this as well. Let's have a look at this now. A bit more pink, a little bit more magenta. It's quite dry on the brushes. You can kind of see it and hear it, can't you? It's quite dry, but it's only a little area, so I don't mind. I really don't. Let's just get that across there. Take maybe a tiny touch of the blue as well. I will bring these drawings up slightly as I'm painting, okay? These lines, I'll bring these up slightly to go up a little bit further, because you could see the difference between this and the photograph. This back of the boat should be up higher. So I'll do that as I'm painting, so not to worry. Okay, that is that colour in. I'm going to take a little bit of blue and a bit of white. I'm just going to come across here with some blue and white. Just to add a little bit of light to the water. Then I'll take my flat palette knife and I'm going to just take a little bit of a white and just with the corner of the knife dab a few little impressions of waves and water breaking off in the distance. Look. It's just adding a little bit of detail into the water, nothing else. Isn't that just fine? I think that's absolutely fine. Using the same brush, I'm going to clean my brush just quickly. I'm going to put in a little bit of sand colour. I'm going to graduate from the water into a sand colour, okay? Let's try a little bit of burnt umber, Naples yellow, some magenta. Now that shade I'm using just for the darkness of the water, whereas you can see where the sand is wet from the water. So I'll use this shade just along here like that, okay? First. Then I'm going to soften it very gently into the water. That gives us a lovely transition, doesn't it? You see that? Nice soft transition from one to the other. And then immediately, I'm going to clean my brush again. Go into some Naples yellow with some white. And we get that nice bright coloured sand in underneath. And almost looks pretty much pure white almost. So let's put plenty of white in there. And I'm going to then soften that again very gently up into that darker brown, you see? So we now have the impression that the sand is wet from the water coming in, don't we? We have that little bit of an impression. And finally, I'm going to take some white on my palette knife again and just come in on that sand with some suggestion of waves just coming in. And you see how that now immediately breaks up that area. It just breaks up that sandy, wet sandy area. And that's lovely. The next thing that I'm going to do, so where would you go from here? What I would probably do is fill in all of this sand down here and put in the shadow of the boat. Shall we do that? Let's try it. Come on, let's have a bit of fun. Let's take a nice sand colour. Let's get some Naples yellow, a little bit of burnt umber, a bit of white, maybe a touch of black, the tiniest touch. That gives us a natural shade for sand. See that? A little bit more Naples yellow, a bit more white, and we could even add a touch of cadmium in there to give us that brightness as well. So you see, as it comes down, we have a kind of a mauve-y shade, a kind of a warm grey sort of a shade. Well, let's clean the brush very quickly. It's not spotless. I'm going to make a nice mauve for that area. Phaylo blue, little bit of magenta. There's mostly magenta in this, okay? There's a lot of pink in this. And then just lots of white. Little touch more pink. Now, let's come down. And the problem is, we have a yellow next to a blue. You see that? If we try and mix these together, it might go a kind of a funny green sort of a colour. So let me show you how to fix that. I just need to get some white from my palette. A little bit more white. What we do is we just add a bit more pink into the mix. Now, you can see that's kind of a pinkish mauve. Maybe a touch of Sienna. Tiny touch. Now that will mix much easier. You see how that's mixing much nicer into that yellowy shade, isn't it? Let's take a bit more white. As it comes towards the middle, it lightens very brightly, doesn't it? Now, let's just soften all of this together. Get a nice soft effect. Now we have a lovely transition, don't we? Without mudging the colours. They're nice and soft and whatnot. They're lovely, lovely shades. Then we just start darkening it as it comes down to the left. Bit of black, bit of blue, bit of magenta. And we just start adding some little bits of shading into it. Maybe a touch of burnt umber as well. We could go with burnt umber. That will give you more feeling of a sand as well. You see? Looking quite nice. Maybe a touch of it over here. And I'm not copying this exactly. I'm kind of adding my own little touches into the painting as well. Now, bit more phthalo blue, tiny bit of black. We just come down here with a nice deep shade. Okay. Now, already, I think that's looking pretty nice, don't you? It's looking pretty nice indeed. Then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this palette knife. I'm going to make a very bright, whitey, sandy, yellowy shade. A very bright sunlit colour. Okay? Probably just Naples yellow and white. Maybe a touch of cadmium yellow. Tiny touch. I'm going to just put in a nice bright shade of sand. Just there and there. You see that hint of light where it just hits the sand. And then I just kind of soften it with my knife very gently, like so. Now we can do the same in the middle. So let's take that bright whitey yellowy colour, very, very bright, and let's go across here with this. Let's just scrape that colour on. Now this will really stand out once we put in our shadow. You will then see the difference. It will really start to take shape. But I'm just kind of slowly transitioning these together, just bringing them together slowly. There we go. Now that's fine. The next step I would take is I would probably put in the shadow of the boat next. Let me get a flat brush. Okay, I'm just going to clean a nice flat brush here. Let me just make sure it's nice and clean. Now it needs to be really, really clean. Some of my brushes I've left with paint on them by accident. So I'm just giving this a really good clean. You want a nice soft brush. I like using these soft brushes, they're lovely. Let's go in underneath this and get a nice dark colour on. Let's take some burnt umber with some black. Now watch how this very dark shadow immediately brings everything to life. So let's just say the bottom of the boat is around here, isn't it? We can actually sketch in the bottom of our boat again. Okay. And I'm going a bit higher. So let's take burnt umber and black. And I'm going to just sketch in with my brush this shadow rather. It comes out. Now it starts going into a dark sandy colour. Well, it's not a sandy colour, it's like a deep shade. I'm going to make it like a purpley shade, okay? Bit of blue, bit of magenta. And it goes off, doesn't it? Disappears. I'm going to make the boat this high like this, okay? And then it goes off into the grass, doesn't it? Disappears onto the grass. So we will then paint in our grass later up here. You see? So I just want to get the shadow just in out of the way. Now put a bit more black right in along underneath here, and that dark shadow will really make everything else pop later on. You might not see it now, but once all the grasses and stuff are done on the boat, you will then see it. It will just really pop. I might even take a bit of Sienna, pop a little bit of Sienna in there, soften that across. Oh, there. Now, I think that's absolutely fine for now. That will do. Okay? Just be careful not to work the area too much, because you can very quickly overdo your painting. So I would just do that, I would leave it, okay? That's absolutely fine. I'm going to put in the grasses on this side next. I think they need to go in. So we're just putting in bits and pieces as we go. There's absolutely no rush. Let's just take our time. I'm going back to my big brush. Give it a nice clean. Let's pop in some grass up here. I'm going to start with a little burnt sienna and burnt umber and a tiny touch of black. I get this kind of darker shade in first. That's what I tend to do. And then I put my highlights on over that later on, okay? So just first, let's get these darker shades in. Bit more burnt umber. Go along the edge of the boat like that. And I'm just being very random now. Let's go into some Naples yellow now and pop some Naples yellow in there. Okay, clean the tip of the brush just to keep it nice and clean. Let's go on, move on down. Follow the line of that boat. Okay, now, so we have that done. Then I will go into some very bright colour. Naples yellow with some white. A very bright straw colour. Maybe a touch of cadmium. Why not? Come on. That will give us some proper light on all of that now, doesn't it? I generally fill all of this in with my bigger brush. Then I go to my fan brush for the last of highlights and stuff like that. So I'll go to my fan brush now, pick up a fan brush, and let's get some nice bright thick shades in here. You see? Just making it nice and random like that. And we can still add darks into this if we need to. Get a bit of burnt umber, a bit of burnt sienna. And we can come down, we can just start adding little suggestions of things. They can be just suggestions of things. They can't, you know, they don't have to be visual as something, okay? They can be just suggestions. We'll put a bit of darker colour here and there, just as it comes forward. A little bit of shading is nice, especially down the back here, look. Now you can work this as long as you feel you want to. You can just keep working away at it. It's up to you how far you would like to go with all of this. I'm just going to gradually add a little bit down here and there through the sand. Just make it look busy. A couple of bits, look, a couple of bits and pieces. We could even have a few bits over here as well, just popping up. You see how that just makes it look a little bit busy. And you can see now how the shadow is starting to come to life, isn't it? It's starting to bring the painting to life. I'm going to put a bit of pinky brown colour in here as well, just to add a little bit of warmth into some of it. Now that's fine. I will go back and do this over here. I want to close that gap in over there by that shadow. I want to close it in. So, a little bit of Naples yellow, a little bit of cadmium yellow, and you see the problem is it needs to be darker against the background sand. The sand is quite light, isn't it? So we'll go for a slightly darker shade. There we go. And I'm going to go right into the boat. Maybe take some burnt umber, black, bit of sienna. Just like that, okay? Now once we have that darker shade in, I'm going to put a little bit of a very dark colour just at the base where the shadow meets. Okay, just like so. And I'm going to just soften it very gently down. Now we have that ridge of shadow on the grass, don't we? That looks lovely, doesn't it? I really like that. The last step now, I'm calling this part one finished. The last step is let's get some nice warmth in those. Bit of Naples yellow and burnt sienna. And then maybe even put a hint of white through them as well to catch the light. Let's imagine the sun is catching the tips of all these grasses here. Okay, just like that. Now, if you feel it needs to be more yellow, you can, of course, just add yet more yellow to it. Bit of Naples, bit of cadmium. And we cut in front of these with those ones, you see. So it's all about creating separate layers. You see what I mean? I mean, I could probably finish this grass while I'm here. Should we? Let's finish it, come on. Why not? Let's finish this grass while we're here. Take a bit of sienna, a bit of Naples yellow, a bit of any kind of a dark shade, just to get us going. And I'll get some more Naples on my palette. We might as well finish this grass as we're here. It's only a little bit, isn't it, my friends? So why not just finish it? Come on. It'll take but a minute. That's all, literally. Naples. Thick Naples yellow. There we go. Nice thick Naples. Just pop it up in front of the darks. Here we go. Here, there and everywhere. Settle that down on the sand. And already that looks quite nice, doesn't it? I'm going to get some black, a little bit of magenta. And I'm going to just add a bit of darkness into this one, just here and there. And I need some burnt umber, don't I? My burnt umber is gone. And that's a very important colour for painting grasses, isn't it? Burnt umber and sienna. I don't have sienna left, but I can manage with some burnt umber on its own, I think. And a bit of magenta. Swirl your brush around in all different directions. Look, let's just get some nice grass going here. And then we go back into Naples. We add a couple of nice highlights around the front of it here. Now again, you can stop. If you feel like you're going too quickly, you can just stop. I'm going to just take my palette knife and pop a little bit of light in over here, just to show there's a bit of light catching the sand over in that corner. Like so. And I would say we're almost there. We could just add a couple of last minute little dips in the sand. Just one or two little holes. Maybe the water has kind of got in there, and it could be anything, all right? It could be anything at all. And then we just go around those with a little bit of white. Take a little bit of white. Let's just go around the fronts of those and soften it down. You see how that just adds a little hint of detail to it, doesn't it? Just a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to call this part one done, my friends. I think we're finished with part one. Let's not keep going for fear of making little mistakes. I would say just leave it well alone. Maybe, just maybe, I might take a palette knife, just pop a few more solid suggestions of grasses, just there like that with my palette knife. Just mess around with it, just dab, 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 dab. Just try and kind of have a bit of fun. Maybe there's a couple of bits of little buds and stuff like that up on top of some of these. Just again, you're breaking up the scene, that's all it is. You're trying to break it up slightly. I'll leave it at that, my friends. Part one is finished. Now, what did you think about that? I have to say, I think that turned out quite nice. Let me fix this camera here. I'm quite pleasantly surprised. It's looking quite nice so far, isn't it? All we have to do is our boat, tidy up a few little bits and pieces, and we are done with this tutorial. I'm looking forward to the boat because a nice splash of red will really catch the eye, and we'll show you about shadows and little bits of detail as well. So my friends, thank you so much for joining me in part one. I hope you're following along, and join me in part two. We finish this beautiful little beach scene with a boat. Thank you so much for your support, and happy painting, and have yourselves a lovely day. Take care. I'll see you soon.